Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes is a creative low-budget film from Japan about a pair of monitors that respectively see slightly ahead and slightly behind in time. Much like this team's other film River, it's playful with quirky characters that mostly is interested in experimenting with its unique sci-fi mechanic. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me from 2 minutes in the future is David.
Should I wait for 2 minutes before I answer?
No, that's too long. That's far too long. Just
okay. I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast, and that was a fairly on the nose reference to the movie we're about to talk about, but you've probably not heard of it, so we'll tell you all about it in a minute. Yeah. This is a sci-fi movie podcast. We get together and talk about a movie. It is that simple. And today, our current goal for the next few months, for the most part, not every episode, but a lot of the episodes are us for checking out some maybe under the radar sci-fi movies from this decade, this decade so far, from 2020 onwards, and this is a 2020 movie we're looking at today. Is a film called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, and it's actually, when I put this on the schedule like 6, 7, maybe even more than that months ago, it was a complete unknown that just sounded interesting, that was on some top 25 list of the decade, and that's how I found it. But coming into it, we actually are coming in with a set of expectations, because it just so happened that we did a movie by the same director and sort of general team earlier in the year called River, which we like quite a bit. So we came in with a sense of maybe the tone of what to expect and that kind of thing. And having now watched it, I can safely say this was definitely made by the same people who made River. So
yep.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into spoilers. And if you are enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. You can also get bonus shows from me and David, as well as the rest of my Fuzz movies, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the show. So, what is Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes? Well, seemingly a Mac, just an iMac, I guess. I was going to say like Mac Pro or something, but yeah, just an iMac. An iMac screen and a random TV form some kind of time travel link where
a wormhole or something.
Yeah, basically it's like a Skype call where one screen is 2 minutes in the future, and relative to that screen, the other screen is 2 minutes in the past, and the characters who are dealing with this in a cafe in Kyoto try and figure out what's going on, see if they can explore and deal with it, and shenanigans happen as a result. And I will just leave it there as far as spoiler-free goes. But if you know River, which was a time loop movie where each loop was only about 2 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that, and
I think it was just 2 minutes flat.
This one, of course, is just this 2 minute kind of window into the future, and then they play with it as they do. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I went in with a expectation of maybe how quirky it might be or whatever. I guess the one thing I will say before we just sort of get to our general impressions, you can tell this movie was made with a lower budget than River, because this was first, of course. If nothing else, just purely because I think the visual quality, whatever camera they were using, just didn't look as good. It looked a bit ropey from a quality perspective. No comment on the choices of how to use it or the skill or like what they were doing with it. Just purely the raw visual quality. It looked a bit ropey to me.
Yeah, I think I saw a trivia bit basically saying that he had essentially a Japanese version of a GoPro, and was just basically using that. It was super small, super lightweight, and allowed him a lot of versatility of how he was moving around.
That is fair, but it looked much worse from a visual perspective than River did. River looked very nice and pretty by comparison. But clearly, I mean, apparently this was like an acting troupe that got together to make this, and I definitely recognized a few of the same faces that are in River after this, which makes sense. It does feel like a sort of group project where, yeah, they obviously had access to this cafe, and there's like a little apartment that's up the stairs from the cafe, and that's basically the location. And much like River, in River, every time loop was a winner, and that was like a harsh cut every time the loop reset. Here, the movie actually is presented as entirely as a winner. Obviously, it's not really. There's some hidden cuts.
Oh yeah.
Right, to make it work. But I was laughing because I'm like, okay, we've got like a time gimmick of some kind. We've got oneers. This is clearly. If I was checking on Wikipedia. I was actually trying to see kind of what you just answered actually about how they shot it with a GoPro kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for like if there was info because I was like, was this shot on like a phone or something? Because it has that kind of look to it. But one thing I did see is that apparently a movie presented as if it's in one shot is an example of Nagamawashi, which is a subgenre of low-budget, one-shot Japanese movies that became popular after One Cut of the Dead, which came out in 2017. So there's a name for Japan doing this specifically.
It's strange that would have only, like, you know, usually whenever I hear about these film things, it's after they've already been long in existence for a while. It's strange that this is still going on and it just started in 2017.
Well, I don't think it just started in 2017. I think it just became popular after.
Right. But I mean that's what I mean. Yeah. I guess the American equivalent would be the when we had our found footage kick for like a decade there.
I mean, you say that there was definitely Asian found footage movies as well.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying when it became popular across the sea, where we were like, oh yeah, now we're just going to do that like 3 times a summer until 2009 or whatever.
I mean, I don't know how frequent it is, but clearly, obviously, this director and team like doing this kind of thing. And much like River, it does give it this sense of, you know, despite how quirky and lighthearted it is at times, it still feels ultra real because so much of it is getting done in one take. You know, and you get that sense of geography. Just like River, I got this sense of like, I know exactly the path of the staircase to get up to the apartment from the cafe. They start to feel like home by the end of the movie because we spent so much time just going up and down them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like that element is there for sure. But regardless, we'll get into everything as we go. David, what did you think of Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes?
I think it's something we said in River was that it took its concept and it explored every single aspect of it. It just immediately, it set it up well enough that the audience understood, and then it just went off and it started exploring every way you possibly could with it. And I think this is another perfect example of that, where they set up this core concept of there is a TV that's 2 minutes into the future, and then they just run with it. And by the time you hit even like, I would say the second act, honestly, by the time you hit that, they're getting into so many different like layers of depth of how you could explore this and how you can use this, and like things like predestination versus free will and stuff like that, and whether or not they're making their own choices right now. I love how deep they go into that. It's super well done. It's a very tightly written script. I mean, it is only like 70 minutes long, so it's not overstaying its welcome by any means. It's exploring everything super in depth. But if I had to have just one tiny little nitpick about it, it's that I think they may have spent too long in the beginning of like setting the rules and like explicitly showing the audience, here's how it works, and then doing that again on a different loop, and then doing it again on a different loop. And it's just, maybe it's just because we're more genre savvy to this sort of thing or something, but I feel like by the time that it hit about the third time, I was thinking that they were just wasting their very short runtime that they had, and I would have liked to see them jumped into that other stuff sooner. But once they jumped into it, I was perfectly fine with it. Like, I immediately forgot about the intro bit that may have taken a bit too long, and it was immediately into the way they were playing with things. So it does feel a lot cheaper. I think that is due to locations as well. As much as River was more or less one just singular location, it was a very large one, and it was very mapped out. They took full advantage of their scale. This one, I can't even think if there is anything outside of 2 rooms. I think it is just literally 2 rooms. 3 rooms, technically.
Yeah, I mean, you go into the street briefly at the start, and then one bit later on. But it's basically one little corner of a street.
Yeah. But I mean, you can feel it's cheaper, but it doesn't feel like it is negatively impacting what they want to do. It feels like they adapted the story to fit what they had, and they really made it work for them. So overall, I'd give it 2 thumbs up. I really think it was a very well done piece of sci-fi, little low budget tech there.
Yeah, it's funny, you said something about once it hits Act 2, and I'm like, I don't even know if I noticed when an act break was in this movie. It just kind of, you know, it's all about, because it's not, because I mean, you said loop, and I can see why you still say it as a loop in this movie, but it isn't really, because they kind of infinitely run into each other as opposed to having this hard reset. So it's kind of weird, especially once we start getting to more levels of things going. Otherwise, spoil it. So, I liked it a lot. I quite quickly it sets up its premise, wastes no time getting there, and I think to combat the critique you had a little bit, while I did have the thought, oh, do we always have to see the second side of every single time they do an example of what they're doing? Again, I'm trying to keep fairly spoiler free here and just sort of be vague, but I think it kind of worked in a sense. Though it was always interesting to watch purely because they did their best to do it all, at least what felt like a oneer, in the sense that you would see one side of it, you'd see you'd follow the characters go to the other screen, and then play out the other side of it, and they'd have to match what they did before. And it's not so. I think from a perspective of shooting this, like, it's never that complicated to understand, right? But the logistics of actually figuring out how to shoot this thing would have been such a puzzle, because there's times where it's like, okay, so you have to pre-record something that's playing on the other screen, or maybe you're doing it in post if the screen's just got like a blue sheet like taped over or whatever, whoever they did it, right?
Yeah.
But regardless, you're going to have to do it multiple times, and sometimes you could get away with it being the same performance by just capturing it in two cameras, but you can't always do that, because sometimes like you have to have the camera go behind where it would be seen on the other camera. So you can't always get away with that. Sometimes you're going to have to just do it multiple times and have the actors repeat their lines and repeat the moments and stuff like that, which is something that to an extent all time travel has to deal with, time travel movies does. But with this one, because you're doing it in this way where it's like, one, it's only 2 minutes apart, so it's very easy to remember if something's changed, so they have to be very precise with it. And two, because we're doing this thing where we're following the characters go from like the 2 minutes in the past to the 2 minutes in the present in real time, and following the direction, and there's no, at least visible cuts to a separate part, that was still making it feel kind of impressive, even when it was like, okay, it's the third time we're seeing two sides of the same thing. But it is smart that at a certain point it kind of like moves away from that and says, okay, we don't have to follow that as religiously. The plot can move on now to like debates about other things and doing some different stuff.
Yeah.
But it's fun. The characters are likable to watch. They're entertaining. It's got a good upbeat vibe. Arguably, this movie actually introduces more of a threat to the characters than I think River ever did, in terms of like, there being danger of some kind. I thought that when it played with that, it was really cool. Interestingly, it also has like how do I phrase this? It has like basically there's something that kind of explains stuff in the third act that felt very similar in both movies to me in a lot of ways, and that's kind of here as well. But I would say that I think I slightly prefer River, because maybe just the characters are a bit more fleshed out in that, and like I understand their wants and needs and whatnot. Here it's a bit simpler. That said, there is still something. Like the main character still wants something, and it still gets a payoff in the story. So it's very tight. It's a very tight little idea. It's a very tight little script, and it's so creative. Like every way this movie works is because they were so creative thinking about how they could show this, how to make it understandable, and how to keep playing with the idea, and just do everything they could with their idea on what little budget they had. And I love, and I probably said that about River, because River, well, it still looked prettier and higher budget than this. It was still relatively pretty low budget. I love the creativity with both these movies, and I think it was a super fun watch. And while I say I prefer River, I think it's very slight. I think they're pretty close in terms of actual quality, in terms of, the filmmaking, in terms of the writing, in terms of playing with the ideas.
It feels like both of these movies to some extent are less about less about like a masterful emotional performance, less about great cinematography or anything, but more so just kind of a technical achievement, just kind of an amazement of how did they manage to pull this off as well as they did. And obviously this one has a much lower budget and it's making do with a lot more, but you were talking in the beginning there about the idea of, okay, maybe they had like a blue screen running on the thing, maybe they were recording these things separately. And I think once you stop to think about it, the cameraman is weaving in and out of like everybody's viewpoints here as he's going through. So each of these things that we see on screen must have been recorded separately, because otherwise just from a logical viewpoint, the cameraman would have been in the shot of the other one. So it must have been that they just recorded these things over and over again, and they timed them so perfectly, which obviously, I think that you saying that they come from a stage troupe, a theater troupe, that makes a lot of sense, that they figure out their blocking, they figure out exactly the pacing and cadence of their lines, and they just can repeat them perfectly over and over.
And according to Wikipedia, they shot this in 7 days.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. It's very impressive. And I think the wonder of it, like that's presenting it as a single continuous shot, even with the hidden cuts here or there to actually, make it achievable. I think that just adds this authenticity to like the passage of time that makes it feel like they're not bullshitting you. Even though I'm sure if you actually get a stopwatch out and started like timing like each of the sort of like, okay, well, something's appeared on that screen, so it should be 2 minutes before it appears on that screen. I'm sure if you get a stopwatch out, it wouldn't necessarily always line up. And I'm okay with that. That doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
The point is that in the moment, it feels like we're darting in and out. And there's definitely points later on in the story where, because they know they have to pop in front of the camera, there'll literally be moments where a character will just say, oh, excuse me a minute, just so they can pop their head in and say the thing they're supposed to say and then come back to the conversation.
Right.
And once it gets to that point, like, I'm just like, okay, I'm just like, this is just charming, much like River. It's hard not to be endeared by like this wacky crew of people just making this weird little movie and having fun with it. I don't know how you couldn't watch this and just have a smile on your face by a certain point.
No, I wholly agree. On the stopwatch thing, I will say, I can't spoil exactly when it is, but very, very close to the end of the movie, there is one time where I think that they break it past the point of like disbelief, where they wrap up the loop a bit too soon, and it's definitely not 2 minutes, but that's the only time that I could think of that like it took me out of it slightly. But even then, it didn't feel like it was too unbelievable.
If there's anything that I am going to nitpick, right, and this is not a big deal because like the movie has to work to exist, and it has to, it's super fun. But I will say, if anything made me go, I'll let that go, but I'm noticing that, is how long the power cables on these damn monitors and TVs were. Jesus.
Yeah, so just for the audience context, one of them begins in a bedroom that is upstairs, up like a whole flight of stairs and back into a hallway. And then the other one's down in like the main area of a cafe. And they get these two in the same room at one point, but they never unplug them and replug them back in. They just carry them from their singular location to the next location they need to get to. And it is absolutely ridiculous to imagine the power cable going that far.
Like I could have like bought. I mean, Joe, I didn't do this is because they're doing it all in a oneer, and they want like before and after they move it to be part of the experience and like them getting to the screen on time and all that. But part of me does want like a little section where like, okay, we have to like we can't turn it off. So we have to. Well, one, I suppose it'd have been better if it was a laptop, just so that it would have made sense to move it. But like, I love the idea of them having to like somehow without turning it off, daisy chain a bunch of extension leads so that they can like get it down into the cafe with the other one.
The center 25 minutes of this movie stops talking about time travel, starts talking about electrical engineering.
We somehow have to do the impossible. But anyway, super charming. I mean, I recommend this just about as much as I recommended River. It's where it sits.
Honestly, I really, after seeing this one, hope that he does come out with a third one of like super short time theming, whatever, whether it's a loop, whether it's in the future. I'm hoping that will be a third totally separate thing, but I want a trilogy. I want there to be 3 movies of this same sort of concept that I could just sit someone down and say, this is going to be the most charming little 3 movies of sci-fi that you're ever going to see. And we could just give that to them.
Like as much as we're saying, oh, you can tell it's maybe the same people with the tone and the oneers and all that, the actual core concept of both movies is very different. So I would certainly hope if they think of a third thing, that it is going to be something that's around 2 minutes in length that we can play with, but isn't either this or the time loop.
Yeah.
So whatever that could be, I don't know. But
yeah, that's just it. Like, thinking about it, I can't think of anything that would work, but I also doubt I would have been able to come up with the concept of this movie of a Skype call 2 minutes in the future.
This is a them problem, not an us problem.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we will gladly take the fruits of their labor, but don't expect me to be the ideas guy.
Absolutely. So honestly, I think we have to go to spoilers. I don't think we can talk about anything else.
Yeah, no, that's... I mean, there's one other thing I would want to bring up, but it is borderline, like, kind of a spoiler, so I'll just hold off on it.
Yeah, hold off on it. That's fine. I mean, obviously, I normally do the cast rundown. I mean, I'll mention this is also directed by Junta Yamaguchi, who directed River. Cast-wise, though, I mean, like, almost none of them even have photos in IMDb, so there's not really a whole lot to talk about, unless you want to just point out a performance that you liked.
I will say I am on the Japanese Wikipedia in order to try to figure out more of, like, who the actors and actresses are. And the one Aya, who is in this, the, like, cafe barista sort of character, she's the main character in River.
Yeah, I thought I recognized her, yeah.
So, like you said, there's a lot of carryover, but she's the one that, like, I recognized as...
Yeah, there's a guy in, like, a suit and sunglasses later on in the movie who I'm pretty sure is the businessman who was just in the shower in River. I'm pretty sure that was him. But that's just from memory, though, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I feel like I recognized him. But anyway, like, I wouldn't be surprised if every single actor in this is in River. It's just that there were so many characters that remembering them all is tough. So yeah, spoilers for Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. You have been warned. The movie starts out in the street. We get a little quick interaction between our main character, who I'm going to assume is Kato because he's the first one listed on IMDb, but I mean, I didn't catch a single name in this.
I mean, I caught Aya because that was...
They said it at one point, yeah.
Yeah.
But everyone else, like, it came and went very quickly. But he waves at her or whatever, and he goes in, and he's basically done for the day. They establish that he's got, like, a little indie band that he's going to perform in that's mentioned. And but for the most part,
he owns the cafe as well. I think that's said later on.
Well, I think Aya keeps calling him boss, so I assume he does. And because they make a little joke about, have a nice trip home, and he's like, I'm upstairs. Like, I literally just go up the stairs and I go into my apartment. But all of this is just obviously just like a couple of little things that are set up for later. But for the most part, the movie's about getting him into his room where he's going to play his guitar and he's looking for his pick, and then on the Mac behind him, you see him, and he's staring, and he starts talking, and obviously he's very confused to hear this, and he's like, I'm you, 2 minutes in the future. You're looking for your pick, right? It's under the rug. And he finds the pick, and says a couple other things, but he's like, hey, you have to leave now. You have to be down here to tell yourself that you're 2 minutes out of the future.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, okay. And we follow him down, and he goes down into the cafe, and there the TV is that's sitting there, and he sees himself, and we get it played out from the other side, where we see over his shoulder talking to the one that's in the apartment. And that's the premise of the movie. It's set up, done.
I mean, you're right, but then it continues to then set up, like, how exactly does the loop work? And it reinforces that over the next few things. What we get really established here, even in this first scene, because you said he wants to play his guitar, and him in the future tells him where his guitar pick is, and it's like underneath the carpet or something. But there's no point. No information is ever generated. It is always in existence that he looks under that because future him told him to, and he tells past him because future him told him to. So this entire movie is just the bootstrap paradox over and over and over again. It is just information is created, but you never get to see how.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the one that stuck out to me was later on with the money, where I'm like, how would they have ever found that money had they not told themselves where it was? Like that one really stuck out to me. Whereas the guitar pick, I'd be like, oh, he could have just found it.
But like there must have been like a loop zero where he would have found it.
I get what you're saying, but I can believe that he just found it in the first run through, and it's just been in the loop ever since then.
Right.
But with the money, they find later that some gangster's hidden in a VCR. I'm like, there is no way they ever stumbled onto that without the time shenanigans to tell them that was there. So,
I mean, I once had to do a student film that tried to do some stuff with bootstrap paradox and time travel and stuff like that. Not nearly as well done as this movie was, I'll tell you that much right now. But
I wouldn't even have questioned if it was, David.
Yeah, not even close. But no, it's super intriguing to me, this idea, especially as they explore it later down, because they don't ever question that. They never bring up the idea of like, but wait a minute, how could we have known that if we didn't tell ourselves that? They just kind of blindly accept like, yep, we just know these things.
That's what you do. That's what you do. So you actually bring back this concept for the third in the 2-minute trilogy. And but this time you have them explore that side of it, is how did we even get this information in the first place?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that's how you expand it.
The last in it's going to be time travel, but like you can only jump backwards in time 2 minutes at a time.
Yeah, could be that. Could be that. Yeah, you can fix something very briefly.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, he's kind of just on his own here, right? I think Aya kind of notices him at, like, at the end of this conversation and is like, wait, what are you doing? What are you talking to? He's like, just myself. Nothing big. All right, and then, of course, like, from here it progresses and, like, more people gradually get involved with each kind of passing loop. Like, it's her and the first friend that shows up, who kind of, like, become aware of it, see him talking to himself, and it's not a big deal because he takes him up to the apartment, or no, he's up in the apartment, and the friend and I are there in the cafe looking at the screen on the second go round, and they're like, "Oh, hey, wait, you're on the screen. What is this? Are you making YouTube videos? Is this a YouTube video you made?" And he's like, "Kinda." But then the one in the apartment in the past says, or he responds to one of the things they say, and like, wait, he just responded, and then he responds to that as well, and they're like, wait, how are you doing this? What sort of magic trick is this? How are you responding on the screen when you're standing right next to us?
In fairness, they're throwing out a bunch of completely reasonable aspects of like, is this AI? Is this like a bot? What are you doing here? And he's just like, nah, it's just me. I'm just in the room.
Actually, just on the subject of you saying and the like throwing out reasonable things like AI. Later on, when the gangsters show up and they're complaining about the VCR, like the money being hidden in it, the gangster says, in the age of Blu-ray, they hid money in a VCR. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the subtitles, it was spelled Blu-ray with an E, and I thought, oh, come on, who did the subtitles for this? That's not how you spell Blu-ray.
That's how you spell Blu-ray when you don't want to pay for the Sony trademark.
You don't have to pay to see it.
They're not running that gambit.
I just stuck out to me. But anyway, so then they get like, okay, that's weird. So to prove that this is real, he takes them up to his apartment, and they're looking at the screen, and sure enough, they see not only themselves, but they've called 2 other friends, and they end up on the screen as well at one point here. Like, it's actually really difficult to remember the order of all these, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to sort of sum up the progression of events, is that more people get involved, and one of the 2 new friends who shows up, one's sort of a nerdy, smart, skinny guy, the other one's kind of the chubby one, right? The nerdy one, quite quickly, starts to, because there's a little bit in between some of these. Like the first time he goes down and talks to himself, he goes over to the little chalkboard that's by the counter and he like scrubs it off, and like Aya's like, I just drew that for tomorrow's menu, what are you doing? He's like, it's fine, you'll do it again later. And he's like trying to like draw a diagram of what just happened, and he's like trying to like figure it out. But the nerdy guy, once he gets involved, he's like, wait a minute, there's possibilities here. And
he scrubs it off, and he does a much better looking diagram to explain what's going on there.
And then he has an idea, and he shows like 3 monitors, and you're like, wait, how's there 3?
Yeah, because they get into a discussion, they start going through it, and they immediately start thinking like, oh, what could we use this for? Like, what could we do? And like they do tiny little things of like, the one guy has a scratch off lotto card, and so he asked future him which one he should scratch off, and he scratches off one that gives him a sleeping bag or something like that.
Which he's very happy with. He thinks that's a win.
Oh yeah, he's thrilled to win anything off that. But very quickly they start like coming to the realization of like, oh yeah,
it's only 2 minutes.
We can't really do much. It's 2 minutes. Like, what could we possibly really accomplish in 2 minutes?
Yeah. So like they've established all this, and at this point, because before things change, actually. There's one pivotal moment, because I actually thought it was interesting that Kato, who started off the story as kind of the main character, he kind of like fades into the background for a while, and it kind of happens because he becomes disinterested in it and just doesn't want to be a part of it because of a disappointment he has here. And this is actually quite interesting.
I mean, you're right, and we can get to that, but I also feel like even before this point, he hasn't won any part of this. He's like, this is horrifying. The fact that we're just constantly beholden to 2 minutes in the future. He hates everything about this concept.
He thinks this is playing with fire or whatever. He thinks this is just like you're going to lead to something bad because you're not supposed to know the future. And but I think one of the first interesting things it does beyond its like initial mechanic, which has done a good job of setting up, is that they're trying to convince him to go and ask out the girl that works in the barber shop next door. Right, that's the girl that was interested at the start that he waved to, and it's he's got a crush on her. We've established that. And they're like, hey, go and invite her to the little indie gig you're doing with the band. And he doesn't want to.
And then future him pops up and says, she said yes,
right?
Go do it.
So immediately, like, it's okay, right, we have to take the screen down and whatever, but hey, go and ask her, like, go, you've got 2 minutes to like, go and do it, and then come and tell yourself that it's successful, right? So he leaves the group as they're like doing things and runs around to ask her, and she immediately says, oh, I'm not really into music, sorry. I said, oh, okay, no worries. And it's like, wait a minute, right? But then you find out, as soon as he tells us to Aya, she says, oh, you have to go and lie. And he's like, well, why? Because it'll break time or something. You have to go and like do what you said before. So he goes and lies to himself, pretends to be happy, and as soon as like he's off camera, he just like his face drops. He is just like, not only do I feel miserable, I did this to myself. I betrayed myself. I set myself up for happiness, and then it didn't happen.
Can you imagine having 2 minutes of just complete and utter joy, and then to come back and find out that you were the one that set yourself up for failure there?
It's almost Memento levels of like screwing yourself over.
Yeah, absolutely. Although as soon as that scene happened, the moment she said like, oh, sorry, I'm not really interested, I'm like, oh God, are we already getting into like the paradox stuff? Are we already dipping into this level of depth of like what happens when the TV doesn't match up with reality? But then they immediately backstep that and be like, no. We're keeping that. We've got it in our back pocket.
Yeah,
it's going to come up.
It's going to come up later, but that's just interesting. The idea we're teasing that something changed, and not, that eventually by the end of the movie something. Well, two things that I knew were definitely going to happen is that at one point something dangerous was going to be like on the screen, and it was going to scare the shit out of them. Right? In fact, they even kind of play with that early as a joke as well, where they joke about how what if we like see into the future and it's like the post-apocalypse, and the next time they look at the screen, there's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland of a city, but then it's
rubble.
But then it pulls away and it's just a photograph, and they start laughing, saying that they've just you got like, okay, that's a little cruel, but it's funny.
I appreciate the moment though, because they play it seriously too. Like it's like 1, 2, 3, and then they take a look at the monitor and it's just ashes, just everything is garbage, and they're just like, oh my God, what did we do?
Yeah, but anyway, the nerdy guy has this idea, right? He wants to bring the screen down. In fact, well, they see it in one go anyway, because obviously they see it before it happens on one monitor. But they bring the TV or the computer down from the apartment, and the guy, the main guy, Kate, was just like, yeah, whatever, do it if you want. But at this point, he's just sad, he's depressed, he doesn't want to really be involved. He's just sitting over, and they never even mentioned the power cable. I thought they were just going to say, it works like a laptop, you don't have to have it connected to anything, even though I know that's not true. But no, you see that power cable dangling the whole time. You see a cable going all the way down.
Yeah, you know what's more impressive to me? Like, I'm sure, and all up until this point, there have been places where they have cut. Like, it's not obvious, they blended in well, but there's definitely places where they have cut. I am so surprised that this entire sequence where they're taking it from the top level down to the bottom, I don't think I saw a single place they could have cut. And that means they did have just that long of an extension cord just to make this work.
Well, I mean, I buy they did it for the movie. I'm just, but we're supposed to believe that his cable is just naturally that. Like, why did he have like 10 meters of cable, like, in his power cable? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, from my perspective of things, I think that they did have access to this cafe, and obviously they had 2 rooms above him. But I do wonder if they had access to that whole stairwell, like blocked off. Were they able to do that for a whole week straight? Because for zero budget, I have a feeling somebody might have tripped over that cable or like walked in the shot or something at some point.
Yeah, it's fun though, because this is the thing. You actually see parts of this like transition where they take the monitor down to the TV like 3 or 4 times, because you see like the initial evidence that they're going to do it, and then you see like them ask if they can do it, and then they go to do it, and then once they get down, what happens is that the whole plan here is the nerdy guys figured out that if you point them towards each other, right? Which, by the way, there's never an explanation as to why the TV can hear or pick up anything, because the computer will have a camera and a mic in it. The TV would not, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. There's already like a time loop thing happening. Just go with it.
There's also this little side problem of every time that they're not directly on camera, they just step like 3 feet away and then have full volume conversations, but apparently the TV doesn't pick that up either.
Yeah. It's fine. You just go with it, because it's just too much fun. Right? It happens. But they point the screens at each other, and the effect this has, of course, is the infinite mirror kind of thing, right? Where then we see the nerdy guy in the future, but then in his future, we see the screen behind him with another version of the nerdy guy 4 minutes into the future, because that's 2 minutes later than the screen that he's in. So we get this effect where we could effectively go back hours or forward hours in time by just looping over and over again with all these, like, so it'll just be like, and then you get like, you see one where it's like you can see like 5 versions of the Mac behind him, and it's like you can sell us a bunch of time where he wasn't around because they're just empty, but then one like 6 TVs down, he's like, hello, it's me from 20 minutes in the future, whatever it is.
You know that gachapon thing you want? Go get it. It's available. Go down to the station. Go buy it now.
Yeah, the zebra ball or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, like, all this stuff is really fun. And this is also where it really breaks the format, where it stops sort of repeating everything, except in really fun ways where they'll sort of just dip in to do it because they have to, hey, we need to like make sure we do that one that we saw 5 screens down the line earlier.
Right.
And this is the sort of thing where I'm like, you know what? It's working well on a level where I'm just sort of trusting them that this is all adding up, but I'm sure they sat down and worked out like all the levels to this and like how much time it was for this level and all that. I'm just trusting them, but it is really fun, and it does feel really complex to actually think about if you stop and try to.
This felt to me like baby's first primer, where it's like, look, it's not nearly as complicated as that ends up being, but like, it is still very complex, and you just kind of have to trust that like everything's flowing the way that it says it should.
Yeah, the way it's supposed to. Also, it's worth mentioning, I think the first time that, or maybe the second time that Aya goes up to the apartment with the others to look at the monitor, there's 2 like random guys in coats that try to talk to her, and she sort of says, no, we're closed, come back tomorrow, we don't want to talk to you right now. I'm just mentioning that because they pop up later at the end.
Yeah, they keep on bringing up like, oh god, are they members of a cult? Like, are they here to induct us or something? Because they're wearing both like identical trench coats and stuff like that, so they look a bit sketchy. Another thing is the moment that they get the infinite mirror thing, as you were going on, it's called the Droste effect, and this is an actual thing in like marketing and media and stuff like that. It is from a cocoa brand called Droste, and the whole thing is that it is a picture of like a woman on the tin who's holding a tin of Droste, which then has her on it holding a smaller tin and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's an infinite chain going the way down.
Well, and that's how they explain it. They literally go over, grab a tin of that, and say, "Hey, this is how this works."
And that is actually the Japanese. If you take the directly translated Japanese title, it actually is at the end of Droste.
Oh, really?
Instead of infinite 2 minutes. So yeah.
I mean, I think this title works just as well, actually, because because there is this idea of the idea of all the monitors that are all, you can see them all in the frame, is the infinite 2 minutes. It's like an infinite set of 2 minute intervals. So, and then at the end of the movie, we're beyond that because they turn off
beyond the infinite 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I really appreciate though once they show like the infinite chain, because they do such a good job of setting it up, where the first one is just, okay, we've got the A computer and the B computer completely separate, and we make sure that is fully established. Again, I think maybe a bit too deeply, but whatever. Second, they get the 2 pointed at each other, and they make sure to only go 2 levels deep. And then they put a blanket over the top of it to just be like, okay, you only need to establish that you understand 2 levels deep. And once they get that fully established, they're like, all right, we're taking off the blanket. And you see the moment the blanket comes off, it stretches like 8 levels deep after that. Like you see it's like, this is the rest of the movie now. This is what we're doing.
Yeah. And what's so fun about it is when stuff's going down later with the gangsters and stuff, is you get this idea, and you see it a few times, where if the camera is in between the two screens, right, the computer and the TV, if you look to, I mean, it depends what side you're on, I suppose, relative, but let's just say you're coming in from, right, so on the left, you see the Mac, right, which is looking into the future, right, and on the right, you're looking into the TV, which is looking 2 minutes into the past, and there's a great thing where not only do you get to see kind of the tease of what's going to happen, once it's actually happening, you see the reactions on the TV of them seeing that it's going to happen, and then you can flip it the other way around, and you see that what's happening 2 minutes out of the future of this, or you see someone in the future reacting to the when it's happening, when it's already happened, but we already saw them reacting to it before it was going to happen. It's like, I love this idea that later on in the movie, when the character's explaining it to the barber girl, he basically just says, yeah, on this side is 2 minutes out of the past, on this side is 2 minutes out of the future, and it literally does play like that, where you see some events from both perspectives. From like, you see it before it happens, you see it as it's happening, and then you see a perspective from after it's happened. And it's actually really fun seeing all the perspectives and seeing how it plays out. And they do a lot of really fun little things with that as it goes on.
I mean, I like his explanation to the barber the first time around, which is, it's really complicated, and I'd rather not.
Well, yeah, because she ends up showing up to give him a symbol, which later on it turns out to be from an ex-boyfriend who was in a band, and that's why she doesn't like music that much, is because he got slightly famous and just ditched her. So she's got a bit of a
very end of the movie, yeah.
Yeah, when she explains that, yeah. But she comes around and says, "Oh yeah, an old friend left this symbol around. Could you use it since you're in a band?" And he's like, "Well, I play guitar, but I mean, we have a drummer." And he's like, "Thank you for the symbol." And I love that we focus on this for a few minutes while the other characters they're just running around playing with the time stuff, and like,
yeah, they've already figured out, they're like, okay, we need a way that isn't going to rely on us to stay here for multiple years in order to like play the stock market or something. So we need something that's just going to be a few hours. And as they think they can't come up with any ideas, so they're like, wait a minute, let's just go talk to Future Us. Future Us is already going to have figured it out. And so they talk to Future Them. Future Them has a big wad of cash, and they're like, there's a VCR under the underpass. Just go pick it up. It's got a ton of money in it. No problems.
Which is so random, by the way. When they say that, like, wait, what? There's a VCR?
Like, oh, all right, well, okay. And they're like, okay. And they're like, look, it's up to you if you want to do it or not, but we know that you do it, so go do it.
Yes.
And then that's when the barbershop girl shows up. And that's immediately, we see in the in-between of the 2 minute cycles where they saw them saying, go get the thing at the VCR. As the barbershop girl is watching the TV, seeing like, hey, what is it? As your friends are on TV. As they leave, it then shows a man with a knife threatening one of them and then like dragging the barbershop girl along. And then you see even further in the future is Kato saying, hey, it's okay, I'll save you, just wait for me. Yeah. And it's like, well, immediately they're like, we gotta go.
Yeah, well, that's the big turning point where it actually introduces an element of danger. Where, and I knew it was going to happen. They were going to introduce something where they're going to see something that's threatening on the screen, like something bad's going to happen. I mean, if they really wanted to, they could have turned this movie super dark, where they see someone dead, like in 2 minutes out of the future, and like play with that. But like you say, no, you get this thing where all of a sudden there's this threatening gangster with a knife up to Kato, and then you see her being dragged through the frame as you hear a future version of Kato behind that saying, I'm going to save you, I'm going to save you, and you get excited about where that's going. And I think one of the other fun things about the movie script is that almost every item that's used to prove something with the time TV, that's what they keep calling it, the time TV. Yeah. In fact, at one point the barber girl even says, is that a time TV? I'm like, what? Don't say that like it's a thing.
Yeah. I picked one up at Best Buy last week. What about it?
But like, because one of the things I didn't mention is that when the sort of goofier friend, the first friend that shows up and gets involved, he kind of like does a thing to prove, like, so when they look at him in the future, he says, hey, ask for something that I'll have on me, right? I'll do a magic trick. And like past him up in the apartment says ketchup, and he pulls out a bottle of ketchup. And of course he went and got a bottle of ketchup to pull out because he knew he'd asked for that. So it's impressive. Yeah. But that bottle of ketchup the symbol and the zebra ball thing that the other guy goes to get all come up in wonderful ways. And it's all during this process because the gangsters, like, because it's their money, someone betrayed them and hid this money somewhere, they show up to get it, whatever, right? That's the story behind it. They kidnap the barber girl and take her up to, like, because the gangster lives up in the top floor of this apartment building that's right above the cafe, and they drag her away. And honestly, I wasn't sure how dark they were. Like, what are they implying that they're going to do to her here? I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But she gets dragged away. He obviously does the bit in the future, Kato, where he says, I'm going to save you, I'm going to save you. And he goes to, like, go with it. But...
Well, yeah. The nerdy guy, he comes back in the meantime. He's got his little zebra ball. And they explain the situation to him. And because he is fully mentally, like, he understands the situation. He knows how the time travel stuff works. He immediately locks in and be like, okay, if you take
the screen
past, the cafe screen, the one in the past, up with you, then we can watch it, see the future, and then we can give you the things that you'll need in order to win the fight.
Yes. So he takes the TV and this also has the magic long power cord without any explanation. And so we get this sequence where he's walking up the stairwell with this TV, and as he's going up, one by one, all of the other characters that he's friends with come up and say, hey, put this symbol up your back and keep it there. And then the other guy comes up and says, hey, here's this bottle of ketchup, put it in your pocket here. And then someone is like, here's a zebra ball, do this with it. And as he's going up and they're running up and they're all out of breath, they're clearly doing this very quickly, you realize that whatever they have just seen, and we've not seen it because we're not watching the Mac with them, we're following Kato going up the stairs. So it's this really fun element of, like, okay, we know they've seen something, so now we just get to see how all these things come into play. The symbol was kind of easy to predict. I assumed it stopped a bullet because it's a big sheet of metal, effectively. But
I really love how because they come up in the order that it happens, obviously. So you get the first girl who comes up and she's like, please don't die. But then by the time that the last guy comes up, he's like, God, you were so cool. Like, it's already played out. He's already seen it all happen.
Yeah, he's seen more of it than she did. She just saw him almost get shot and, I need to give him the symbol, otherwise he's dead. Exactly. So you really get, like, you understand how this is playing out for them, despite not seeing any of it, especially once you get to see the scene play out. But he comes in, puts the TV down to watch what's happening, and the gangsters are just, like, okay, we won't question the TV, and we don't understand what's going on there. What are you doing here? Get lost, buddy, and pulls out a knife. And stabs him where the ketchup bottle is, which still makes it look like he's been stabbed, but, he's not.
Well, Kato, like, dives into him.
That's
like,
right,
holds him close, and the other guy's just like, why'd you stab him? We aren't supposed to kill nobody.
That's right, because he knows he's got the ketchup bottle there, so he jumps onto the blade, and then when they're not looking, he hits the main gangster over the head with whatever.
Something.
Yeah. And then, of course, he gets shot in the back, the symbol deflects it, and then it's like the second gangster at this point who's got scared of bugs, this zebra ball opens up into a bug thing, and he just gives it to him, and he freaks out. And it's like, So, it never betrays its lighthearted tone, but it was really fun that it introduced a threat that had to be dealt with, and then used the mechanics that it had already set up to have all the characters help him, like, have a solution for every problem that was about to happen. Like, this was all so much fun to watch play out.
It felt structured in the same way that, like, a good puzzle game is structured, where like, okay, we give you the basics, then we give you slightly more complicated things, and then this is the last level. We're going to take everything you've learned and we're going to mix it all together, and you have to figure out how to solve it with the basics that we gave you before. And it comes together well. Like, I got a little bit lost during the initial explanation of, like, the mirroring TVs aimed at each other. Once I saw how it was, like, actually focused, of, like, you could see further in the future one side, further in the past on the other, I got it. But I got a little bit lost at the point where it was just him bringing the TV down, because I wasn't quite grasping the concept they were going for. But by the time we hit this scene, I get it. Like, as they're coming up the stairs and they're walking up and saying, hey, take this, I'm like, okay, he's immediately going to need that first, and then the next thing, and then the next, and you can see it playing out before you even get to the scene, which makes it, obviously, it removes tension from it, but it's so much more satisfying once you understand the full mechanics of it.
It's working in a different way to a normal script because it doesn't have the tension, like you say. I mean, it does have moments of tension, like you say, when they first see the gangster, when there's not been a gangster around and there's a knife, they're like, what the hell is that? And obviously the barber's lady's saying it, and she's like, wait, that was me. Why am I on that TV? Like, what did you just do? Like, she's freaking out.
When did you record me? I don't remember this.
So, but there's a little tease though on their way back down, or maybe it's when they go back down. Of like, there's like quick flashes on the TV.
Well, yeah, the Kato and the barbershop girl are flirting on the way down, and you can literally see the friends. I think it's Aya and the nerdy one are on the TV, and they're just like, hush, hush, they're flirting. Let's just let them do this. And
that was super fun actually. Even before the like. Because the flashing indicates something's happening downstairs that's either weird or something's going on. But even before that, like you say, that moment where they're kind of hitting it off, they're starting to talk about, that symbol saved my life, and blah, and she's kind of confessing some things. And they're hitting it off. You just see like Aya and one of the other guys just be like, oh, we're listening. We get to hear all this conversation. And because he's holding the TV screen outwards, he can't see it. So they're just having this conversation while they're listening in. But there's these
they hit the bottom of the stairs and see the one friend is unconscious, and that's when they look at the TV again. Yeah,
and there's quick flashes of light, which indicate something's going on. And when they go in, this is when we get the two trenchcoat guys from earlier, and they have ray guns, is the best way I could describe this, and they've knocked out the others. So it turns out these two guys are time cops, and they're aware that some time anomalies happen. It's basically a wormholes form between these two screens, and they're here to fix it. Also, like, as long as none of you have profited from this, we can give you a pass. You'll just get a warning, but we have to erase your memories, and that's kind of the gist of the conversation.
Which I do wonder, if they managed to get the money back from the gangsters, would they have been executed? Like, does that count as ill-gotten gains?
But I mean, I guess does it count as like financially benefiting if it's not like official money? Like, this is money that's off the books. This is just cash from a gangster.
I mean, true, but like in the general sale of things, it's definitely money that they would have zero knowledge of otherwise. So
that is also true. Yeah, it's very strange. So I think this is a really good bit of writing to me as well, because they're explaining this. They're it's very lighthearted and whimsical, like the way they talk about it. It reminded me a lot. I don't want to spoil River, but it reminded me a lot of a character and like the explanation for what's going on in River. It was right. Here's this explanation of stuff towards the end. So they're like, hey, we have to deal with this. Not a big deal. We've got other operatives dealing with the gangsters upstairs, whatever. But when they say, hey, this is some powder stuff you have to take. It'll erase the last few hours. And I even love the small talk here with like, hey, this has come a long way. Time was we'd have to erase your entire, like all your memory would be gone. You'd basically be starting fresh. But now we can just like cut out a couple of hours and it's not a big deal. You'll just like forget, it's like you took a nap. No big deal.
Yeah.
Right? But
obviously because they've had this character development between them in the meantime, they're like, but we don't wanna. Like, we're hitting it off. We want to keep doing that.
Well, yeah, but like it's presented in a way though where it's not like it's really just Kato has that moment where they say it, and because he's had a crush on her, she doesn't really say much in the scene. Like at this point, it's really just him kind of like reacting and going, but like. Not only are we hitting it off, like I just like kind of saved her life. Not that he's expecting to be rewarded for that, but this idea that like this has like advanced their relationship in such a big way over the last 15 minutes that losing that will put him back into the state he was at the start of the movie, which is he's too scared to actually ask her to even just go to like a music concert that he's involved in. So like that look in his face of not wanting to do this, but then of course they look into the TV that's showing the future, and lo and behold, it shows both of them taking the powder and like passing out after they take it. So the two guys are like, hey, it's sad that you don't want to do it, but it's inevitable. It's set in stone. You've just seen it. So, get to it. And it's actually really sweet that it's her, not him first. It's her first, where she intentionally sneezes instead of taking it to like blow it away. and they're freaking out because no, like it's meant to happen now, like we can't, well, this is going to change everything. And then Kato sneezes it away as well, and they pretend like it's an accident, and they're like, you're doing this on purpose, and they're like,
no, just give us more powder, we'll take it, we'll totally.
They're panicking, trying to get their canister open to get more of this memory powder out, but as they're doing it, they start to fade away, and they're like, wait a minute, you've changed the future, this has changed everything because you didn't like adhere to what was on the screen. And they fade away out of existence. The friends are all still like sleeping, right? They're fine, but they're sleeping. And the end of the movie is basically just our two characters here. Kato says, hey, do you want some coffee? He makes her a drink. They sit down, and this is where she talks about her ex, and he talks about what he's into, and they start comparing it to sci-fi, some novel or something she said she read.
Doraemon,
yeah. Never heard of it, but yeah,
it's a manga anime.
Of course it's a manga. Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
I know. Look, I've got a little bit more culture than you, but I'll take it.
I just really don't like anime and manga. That's all.
I know.
So, and it's just, I love this idea, right? It makes it just a little bit extra sweet at the end that, obviously, yes, if you come to care about them a little bit because of their interactions and like him wanting to ask her out and the disappointment that it seemed to go back. I mean, it's not like she turned him down for a date. It was never presented to her like that. Yeah. But he was obviously very upset, and all these things have played out. But the idea that they, like, this is why it's beyond the infinite 2 minutes, is because they basically cheated the entire space-time continuum to have this possibility of a moment. And then the movie just ends with them hitting it off, where they're just talking about stuff. They're talking about sci-fi and talking about what they went through, and he's trying to explain it a bit more than what they actually did beforehand, and you know what it was. And that's just how the movie ends. It's like, hey, it seems like they've actually got chemistry.
As they're talking, the camera pans back over to the future monitor, and then you see three iterations in the future. Her and him both get on screen, and then he turns off the screen with the remote. And it's all right, that's cute.
I thought that they were going to kiss on screen, like show, in the future they're going to kiss. But it's kind of nice that they don't. No, they just choose to like take away, like, no, the future's what we make it. We're not going to adhere to something because we see it in the future. So we're choosing together to turn it off. Which, I mean, it's only 6 minutes out of the future, so they make this decision pretty quickly.
Oh yeah,
relatively speaking. But
they're like, well, hey, everyone else was knocked unconscious by the time cops. You want to go up to my room? I got a TV up there.
But I think it's a sweet ending because like the characters aren't fleshed out to an silly extreme or anything. It's not like they're super in depth with lots of like, like
I'm reading the Japanese Wikipedia article for this movie, and like they're saying that the nerdy guy was a smartphone game developer, and that the chubby guy was a radio drama writer. I don't think that ever came up. I have no idea where they're getting that information at all.
There's probably like I don't know, like a bonus section on a DVD or something. Yeah, here's some profiles for the characters that we made.
A little booklet that was handed out in theaters.
Yeah. Oh, actually, Joey probably was. It was probably just for the actors, so they had like some background for who they were supposed to be. They probably had like a little like character profile for each person for the actors to use, and then it never came up in the movie. But regardless, though, I think it works super well at the end because it establishes enough of like the wants and desires, and then the idea that they break the rule finally and don't. Because I think it's nice that, because you could have done this a million different ways, as to where they see something and then they just actively choose to not let it happen. Right. But the idea that choice leads to like the sort of the will they won't they of the movie kind of finally paying off, and that it's her who's the one who's not like, she's not the one that's aware that it's a will they won't they necessarily, but she makes the choice to not go forward, which is, it's almost like that's the moment that it lets the audience know that she feels something too. Because before that point, there's really nothing other than just, well, I guess she's thankfully saved her, but like, there's nothing super overt. So
yeah, I mean, it, like you said, as we were walking down the stairs, that's when they start hitting it off. That's when they start building this little flirtatious thing between them. And so when they get downstairs and they're told like, okay, and that all has to go away, she's like, well, I don't wanna. And so she just goes against all of space and time to make that, even just a chance of that work. And that's the other thing I think I like about it, is that it doesn't make it so overly sentimental to be like, and we're going to stay together for the rest of our lives, or we're deeply in love. It's just like, well, let's just give it a shot. Let's just see how it works out.
Yeah, and he even brings up that he never planned for much of a future because he'd read Nostradamus as a kid, and stuff was meant to go bad in 1989, but it never did. Yeah. And then it was meant to go bad in 2012, but it never did. So now I'm left planning again.
Which I really like that concept from why he dislikes this little future sight TV so much, is he historically has always let the future dictate it's how always, he lives his life.
Yeah, it's always ruined his life effectively because he's never actually planned for a future because he always thinks it's going to end. So yeah, it kind of adds a little bit of depth into why he feels that way at the end, and him admitting that to her and her understanding it, kind of like just brings them together at the end in a way that really works. So yeah, it's
in regards
delightful.
to that one time that I think that they broke the continuity a little bit. It's the very last time, which is we see the flashes on camera, and they're already like descending the stairs. They're like most of the way down the stairs when they see the flashes, and then when they get into the cafe, the people who were hit, the people who were flashed on the camera, were already unconscious, and those ones are supposed to be the ones that are in the future, if I remember correctly. So there's no reason why they should have already been down.
No, that's the past. It's the wrong way around.
That one's the past. That one's there. Yeah. Okay, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Again, it messes with you after a while. I think
because the one he's carrying is the future one, because that's how they know what he's going to use.
Right. They see into the future and then they come back. Yeah, you're right. Okay. That works out. I think it really could have done a little bit better if they did have like a laptop, not just from the cord perspective, but also just the visual differentiation of which screen is which.
Yeah, I mean, they are pretty different. One's like a Mac and the other one's just a black TV screen. So they do stick out a little bit different, but
just I would have liked a little bit more, but that's, again, there's only one point where it ever really matters, because other than that, they are positioned in very stationary locations and they never move from there.
Yeah. No, it's a delightful little movie. It's just, it feels so inventive with how it just tackles its idea, and much like River, a lot of the fun comes from the character saying, wait, how's this working? What can we do with this? I mean, in River, it's more trying to solve the problem of why is it happening, because they're kind of trapped by it. Whereas here, it's more like, how can we use this to do stuff? Like, how can we win money somehow with a 2-minute vision?
Yeah, they immediately, they start talking about that stuff, and before, I think it's just as they are setting up the infinite mirror thing, like the Hall of Mirrors, where they start talking about, what can we do with this? And then they start talking about, okay, well, maybe we can find a wad of money somewhere. And they're like, yeah, it makes sense that we would just immediately go to how do we get rich? That's kind of the only thing we would get out of this.
Yeah, I would too. But they never come off as, super greedy around it. They seem like just kind of oh yeah, of course that's what we would try to do, but not in we're going to try and take it from people kind of way. Just how do we scam the lottery and win that way.
The first thing they do is one of the guys suggests okay, we can see which cryptocurrency is going to make it big. Right, and because this was set during pandemic, or at least it was filmed during that period, I'm like, oh, buddy. You have no idea.
It came out in 2020, so it depends when they shot it, because they could have shot it in 2019.
Yeah, I did try to figure out exactly when they shot it, and I can't get any reliable information on that. But I would assume if they shot it in 7 days and they don't have that much in the way of special effects, it must have been a quick turnaround on the back end as well.
Yeah, possible. It kind of just depends, though. I mean, if they're that low budget, maybe even getting the post facilities to do all the audio work and final stuff could have taken time. I mean, I don't know. I'm 50-50, because on the one hand, if it's the pandemic, it'd explain why this cafe is okay with being used to film, because they don't have customers coming in. However, on the flip side, there's still a reasonable number of people in this movie that all have to, and the movies weren't shooting for a good period in 2020. It was very strict for a while because we're super on lockdown.
That's true, but I also don't know how Japan was with that, because there were some countries that got real good at covering that real quick, and Japan is already one of those countries that wears masks whenever they're sick.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, again, Japan might have just been handling it better. It wouldn't surprise me.
I did find a link here. It says for the release of the movie, they started a crowdfunding campaign on February 28th of 2020.
So they shot it before the pandemic. Then.
Yeah, they must have filmed it just before that.
Yeah, they probably if they were just like starting to fund to release, they probably shot it like at late 2019 would be my guess.
November, December would most likely be, and then editing, because don't get me wrong, editing I'm sure is what took the longest out of all of this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. No, super fun. Delightful, playful, inventive. Like I will happily take whatever this team of creators wants to do next. Because that's the funny thing, because a lot of the same cast and stuff, it does feel like it isn't just the director. It feels like, I'm sure that, I mean, the director's obviously steering the ship, but it does feel like this ensemble of people that made both these movies, and I'm down for whatever they get to next.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like director-wise, obviously it's not the whole group, but director-wise, he had this movie, he had a couple like short films on the in-between, but then he's doing a lot of like one-season TV things, which I have no idea if it's exploring the same sort of stuff. One of them is called Don't Let Time Go By, so maybe there's more interesting stuff in there. I don't know, it'd be worth looking into.
Possibly. But hopefully they come back, because, you know, this was 2020, River was 2023. Hopefully by 2026 we get a third movie. And even if it's not doing like a 2-minute time concept thing, I'm okay with that too. If they come up with some other fun thing to do. I think, if anything, the only important part really is that they have an excuse for this ensemble of characters to all... what were you smiling at?
I'm smiling because the don't let time go by lovers thing, the little itty-bitty synopsis here is a sci-fi romantic comedy that combines work at the Time Patrol with a love story. It's absolutely all the same stuff.
Good fun. But hey, if they keep coming up with different like ways to use it and different ideas, then by all means go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not complaining. I had a great time with both these movies, and I saw them only a few months apart, so it's not even like I went into this and was like, oh, it's too similar to the other one. It didn't feel that way at all. But
no.
But definitely you can feel the DNA of it being from the same people. Absolutely. Yeah. So no, very good.
Obviously the director has a certain tone where it's lighthearted but still interesting. It's still something that dives into this stuff, and it at times can almost be viewed in the same sort of lens as like a lecture. Like it feels like sometimes they get into the bare grittiness of it just to make sure you understand, but they always come back to the interesting heartfeltness of it and just staying quirkier with it.
Always very endearing. At least
yes,
these two movies have been. So all right, David, what was your scene of the movie?
Oh boy, scene of the movie. I think my scene of the movie is going to be just after the gangsters come back, and it's when the nerdy guy re-enters, and they're like, he immediately takes charge, and it's just like, all right, here's how we're gonna go, and we just get all this set up for like, you're gonna take this, we're gonna help you out, we're gonna do that, because it, as much as having that little moment of here's something tense coming into the plot, and it's something that like our characters now have to react to. Seeing the reaction itself and seeing how they immediately jump on using these tools and taking them to their logical conclusions of, we can use this to help you fight. I really appreciate that, because it just feels like such a satisfying way to get to that point.
Yeah, I'm conflicted, because I either want the moment where they first see the possibility of a threat, when they just suddenly see a gangster on a screen with a knife. And even the fact that follows up where these two know this is going to happen, but the characters come back in with the money all happy, and like they're trying to like say, no, we need to leave right now, and then obviously everything goes down. But I also really like when he's going up the stairs and the other characters are one by one running up with the different items he's going to need to use. And I think what I like about that is because that's a moment that's born completely out of, we've set up all these rules, and we're not going to over-explain this particular part, but you should understand it enough now that you get excited and understand why they're doing this, why they're running up and giving them this item and this item and this item. That's really, really funny and fun and just, I don't know, super inventive to me. I love that. MVP of the movie. A lot to choose from here.
Yeah, there are. But again, it's one of those times where none of them have a whole lot of fleshing out on their own. So it's kind of just, who do I like the most out of them? I'm stuck between main character, who does have a lot of fleshing out on his own, and I think he is a very intriguing character on his own, and nerdy guy, just because he is the person who brings the plot into full focus. He's the one who says, wait a minute, hold on, I'm gonna put these monitors against each other and I'm gonna get this thing rolling. I think I'm still gonna give it to the main character, Kato. I think that he is interesting in the way that he handles stuff. I think that it's nice to have a foil for the rest of the cast where everyone else is just all 100% in, of saying like, hey, yeah, let's do this. Let's make money. Let's explore this as deep as we want. And then he comes back with the, I don't know, guys, this seems like playing God in a lot of ways, and I'm not a huge fan of that. And then even he's not faultless, where, you know, the one time that he believes it's going to work for him, and he comes back and tells himself, like she said, yes, it just heartbreaks him. It takes him down like 7 pegs. So I think he's the most interesting character for me. So I'll give that MVP.
Yeah, especially, I think that part, especially in hindsight of knowing like that he's kind of wasted some of his life because he keeps believing there's no point in trying. And then the one time the future tells him there is a point in trying, it's instantly a failure. It's really, really soul crushing. So yeah, it's kind of weird because I think almost by default it's him, but at the same time, like I almost feel like the camera's the MVP. The camera moving up and down and following them around and like getting the different perspectives and just seeing off the corner what's happening in the screen 2 minutes in the past when they're talking over to the side, and just the attention to detail and the web of like diagrams that must have been drawn to like understand everything that needed to be captured, how many times it needed to be captured in different ways, is just like almost like just it's mind-boggling just how much effort had to go in to make this all work.
In the ending credits, they do have little behind-the-scenes shots of like how stuff was done and like little other stuff. And they have a specific section of the entire cast all sitting around at like desks, and then he's up at a whiteboard just like sketching stuff out. And I'm like, there it is. That's the moment.
On some level, they all had to understand it. So here, we come to class where like,
yep.
I was up all night untangling this timeline web, and now you all have to understand it too.
Oh God, I see one with a paper that has like drawings on it moving diagonally forward, showing like the passage of time. Dear Lord, this was complicated.
Yeah, super fun. So yeah. All right, rating. What are you rating the movie?
All right, so I gave River an obscenely high rating of 9. And
oh, you did?
I do stand by that in a lot of ways, because I every once in a while I think back to that movie and I just think how fun it was. This is up in that range for me. I don't think it hits with the same oomph that River did. I think that one, because of, you know, whether it be extra money, whether it be extra time, whether it be whatever, I think that one just had a little bit of extra something to it where it's more fleshed out, more well thought out, and explores its stuff even further. But I think that this, as kind of like a proof of concept of just what this director is capable of, is A+. I think that it does a great job of exploring this concept it's going for in a much more smaller and muted way. Overall, I think I would probably just end up with this one at an 8.5, but I mean, that's still fantastic compared to like half the stuff we do on this show. So very good.
Don't be half the stuff. This is not Streams After Midnight. The average on this show is much higher.
I'm looking at everything after Iron Giant, and I'm not seeing anything above an 8 until Yang.
But like an 8's still pretty high though. I think you're being too. I don't know. Your standards are not skewed enough yet. You don't know what.
I think that's just, I am always, first off, I've said this in every single time travel movie we do, and I'm always going to say it. I am a sucker for time travel movies. Like, anytime that you mess with cause and effect, I am 100% in. As long as you think it through and like don't be stupid with it.
I am so happy you said that because I've got such a gem for extra reels.
I put that asterisk. We do not be stupid with it. I don't want it to be like a freaking Terminator Genesis crap going on here.
No, that would actually be on the show. No, there's an extra reels episode that someone made me watch on stream that I knew was going to be an extra reels episode.
Oh God. I don't know what it is, but I'm scared already.
I'll just say it's the primer of Christian films.
Oh God, what? Those words should not exist in the same sentence.
I ain't spoiling the thing though. Anyway, yeah, I gave River an 8 out of 10, a very solid 8 out of 10. I was very happy with it. It was a great movie. I think this is basically it, bordering on a very similar level of quality. I think River's a little bit better, but I don't know if it's a rating different or better. Yeah. I think this might still be an 8 out of 10 for me because it was such a delightful time. Okay. I got to the end, I had a smile on my face. Like, it's just as playful as River is. River has just a little bit more put into the character depth, but although having said that, I will say that the third act, here's our time cops and here's the explanation for what's going on. I think I like that slightly more than the one in River. That's like maybe one thing I prefer slightly in this one.
I'm pretty equal on both. I think that they both have a decent amount of explanation there and work it out in similar ways. So I'm all right with both there.
Yeah, I think I just like the idea here of these being time cops and that they're here because there's been a time disruption. I just thought was a little bit more interesting. But that's like the one minor thing I'd say is better in this one. But they're very close overall though, so I'm going to go 8 out of 10 again. I think it's a well worth watching movie. So there you go. David's got his homework movie in a couple of minutes, of course. You'll find out what that is in due time. But of course, I said at the start, you can support the show and help keep this podcast coming, as well as Collector's Cut that I also do with David, as well as Streams After Midnight and everything else, by supporting us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you get bonus shows. Me and David specifically have 2 monthly bonus shows that we do. One is the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection, and the other is Extra Reels, which I just mentioned a minute ago, where we review some of the worst things ever made. Jim Cat is this month's episode, I think. So
yeah, great.
Go check out that. We've done Madam Web. We've done Neil Breen movies. We've done Gone with the Pope. We've done all sorts of wacky things.
We have enough to get you through 2 full years, as long as you only watch one per month. And trust me, you're not going to watch any more than that.
Christian Mingle the movie, that was a gem. There you go. Check out that one.
Fantastic.
So you want to see more of us being miserable, especially David. David, I don't think has the stomach for it, but I make him do it anyway, and that's what makes it so much funnier.
Bro, I don't want to hear it. I had a life before you. I want you to know I had a show where I did nothing but the worst films we could find on Netflix for like 5 years. I have the stomach for it. I don't want to go back to that, is the problem.
And yet,
I'm contractually obligated. Hell yeah.
You agreed to the Extra Reels idea. He's pretending that he's somehow forced into it.
I agreed to it, but I agreed to it under the veil of like, well, if we have to.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's like the most popular bonus show.
Yeah,
so
I know.
You're going to have to deal with it.
And I get all that sweet, sweet Patreon money.
Oh dear. This is well, that's the show. I guess it's time for David to do his homework movie. Every week on the show, David goes back to a movie that he did, or that he wasn't here for, I should say, on Ace. So he's catching up on all the other movies. What was this week's homework movie?
Well, I tried to get a more modern one, and I tried to stick within similar themes, and I managed to succeed pretty damn well here. This was my first viewing of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, okay. A fairly big movie from the last few years. Okay.
Yep. So I was actually going to watch this probably, I don't know, a few months before now. But then once, Ace started being a thing, I was like, all right, it's going to have to be homework. I'll hold off. So finally getting it out of the way here. I've been waiting for this for quite some time.
To be fair, you could have done this for any Ace episode months ago. You were just being a stickler for, I know it has to thematically tie into what the episode was about.
I said it before, I am more cultured than you, and I will stand by that.
Cultured.
So, no, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm just screaming into a sea of noise, though. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, like, it was mid at best. Like, it's a fantastic movie. I knew the gist of it going in. I knew the basics of it. I knew kind of what to expect, but I didn't expect it to be as heartfelt as it was, to take as many big emotional swings. I thought for sure it was going to rely a lot more on the martial arts aspects or the multiversal aspects or all this different stuff. But in the end, like, at its core, it is just an emotionally heartfelt film. That's what it starts in the beginning, and that's what it strives for throughout the entire time. So I really appreciated it. I think it is a very well-made film. I don't really know what more to add to that. It's, again, see every other review and the Oscars for that year. Like, everyone else is already on that boat before me. So I'm just going to give it a 9 and call it there.
Oh, very lofty praise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I think it's kind of in this weird place where I think it's really good, but I also don't think I'm quite as enthusiastic about it as like the consensus is. If that makes sense. Like, I'm right in that weird spot where I think it's really good. I had a good time watching it, but I wouldn't say I've had much of an urge to go back to it again since.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's one where it takes a long time to like leave your mind to the point that you feel like it's time for a rewatch again, because it's I had obviously the directors originally did Swiss Army Man with Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano, and I watched that, and it's the same sort of thing where it's so weird in so many places, but it is amazing how heartfelt it gets by the end of it. And I'm very appreciative of someone who can go that far outside the box of Hollywood norms and yet still manage to land so successfully.
Yeah. All right, cool. There you go. That is Everything Everywhere All at Once. And this has been our episode of the Ace on Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. Yes. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion, and if you got to the end and didn't watch the movie, go watch the movie. It's really good.
Absolutely.
Go do that and enjoy the fun, the chaos, the insanity, and the 2 minutes. So thank you very much. There's a sex joke in here about the infinite 2 minutes. There is.
Yeah. Do you really want to sink to that, though? It's a quirky, lighthearted one. Do you really want to sink to that level?
No.
It's okay.
Nah, but yeah. There's also a Buzz Lightyear joke in there somewhere, but I'm too lazy to think of it.
That's fine.
That's Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes and Beyond. There you go. Or the Infinite 2 Minutes and Beyond. I don't know. Anyway, this has been the Atomic Sim Experiment. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.